No. All right, we'll see if we're getting sound input now. Benny, I think, had sent me a message. So let me know, Benny, if you have sound now. All right, so I apologize. Sound settings had changed from... we'll see if the sound is going out. Let me just check my monitoring computer just real quick and make sure that the sound is coming in. Bear with me just for a second. All right, so I apologize. Okay, so it sounds like we have sound. Thank you so much for letting me know. All right. So the question was about the arranger track. So what the arranger track is going to allow us to do is to actually, so, you know, Cubase had really kind of defined the concept of a linear approach to music making, which makes a lot of sense, where you can see the beginning and middle and end of our particular project. But if we wanted to work non-linearly, or maybe we just have like a verse, chorus, bridge, and we want to repeat those sections, what we could do is go to the arranger track and we could right click and let's add the arranger track, and we could have up to 2. Thank you for your message, Benny. I appreciate that. So we could have one single arranger track, so we could define our particular sections as long as this could be a verse, it could be a solo, we could have sections within a section. And once we have all of these sections defined, we could create what we call a play order in the inspector. So if we wanted to do a new chain, I could say, okay, let's come here. I want to do B twice. I want to go to the intro. I want to go to the chorus. And we could create these different arrangement ideas. So when we do this, I could say, okay, I want to start here, and instead of playing straight and linearly through with the arranger track, we can now just come over here. So you see that section repeated. So instead of playing straight linearly through, we could come up with different arrangements of the same song. And this is also helpful for people that do jingles. Maybe they're doing a 2-minute, a 1-minute, a 30-second, a 15-second, a 5-second version of a project. You could have your one project set up and again have this all be completely non-linear for how the arrangement is played back. All right, so we had another question from Ezra, who just asked about how to mix with a reference for A/B. All right, so what I like to do is to utilize the control room functionality for this. So one of the things that can kind of bite you later is going to be when we actually have a project, and if we have processing that's going on in the master fader or the master bus, that what's going to happen with that often is it's going to play a reference track through all of the processing on the master bus. So it's not a real proper way to kind of do like an A/B comparison with a reference track, because if you're taking a reference track and running it through, if you're running it through your particular, like plug-in chain, that's not really what the reference is, because probably the reference is already mastered. So let's say we want to take a particular project here. All right, and let's say we have, I think at the bottom here, we have like a reference track. So what I want to do with this is we're going to utilize the control room. So we'll go over here to our studio menu, to audio connections. We'll go to the control room. We're going to add a Q mix, and we could just call this like reference if we want. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, so you right click and add a Q mix. So when we have that done, we're going to take, and let's say we have our mix down track here. So if we solo this, now our mix down track is going through our stereo fader, but again, if we have effects on the stereo fader, we want to be able to bypass that and have our reference not go through our master effects. So I'm going to just come over to my reference track, and we could just come over here. I'm going to choose that it's going to be routed to no bus. And if we kind of right click, we could actually you set up sections, and one of them that you could have is a Q send. So I'm going to now come over. Let's go to our Q sends. I'm going to send this to the reference, and we're going to send it at 0 dB. So now when we come over, I could listen to the entire project. This track is not routed through the main stereo out. So if we solo this track, we're going to just come over here to the routing and say, okay, our routing, instead of going to the stereo, we're going to take the output and send it to no bus. So now when we unsolo this track, we have our mix going on. And let's say, just to differentiate it, I want to take this mix and I'm going to put just a nasty EQ on it so that we could tell. So I'm going to put a big mid-range kind of bump. So we're not hearing this track, but if I now go to my control room, now we're only hearing this track. And now if I want to listen to my mix in comparison to the reference, so I can say, okay, this is my mix, this is the reference. So this way you could have a reference that's not going through the master processing. So if I come to this, and let's say on my master track, I want to put like a flanger. So I don't hear this in the reference, but if I go to my mix, we're hearing the processing on the master bus, but not in the reference. So that's an easy way to do reference utilizing the control room to make that happen. So it's a great little trick to do. All right. Next question. Okay, so Amos922 says, hey Greg, is there an easy way to get the MIDI maps from Superior Drummer into Cubase without entering in manually? Articulations make it hard to enter manually, or is there a way to map articulations? So many of the, it's part of the VST3 specification that they could actually extract the drum names, and that would be, I think, up to Superior Drummer to implement it. My feeling would be that they don't have that many companies haven't put that capability in. But there are probably, I'm sure, if you Google Superior Drummer drum maps, that you should be able to find them. But realize that. So, when we're working with a particular drum map, if you're not familiar with it, we can now come over. So when we go to like a groove agent track, we could just come over to, let me just find like a MIDI drum part. Okay, so like when we come over to here, we could actually just create the drum map from the instrument. And if you have a groove agent, now that when we double click on the event, we could see the drum map names automatically carried over. So my guess would be that Superior Drummer is not going to offer that particular capability. But, you may not have to enter in every single drum, so if the drum sample set has, 50 different names. One of those, you may be using 5 or 6 of the sounds. So I think that you would probably have to, create your own drum maps, and we could do that just by coming directly over here. And, when we go to your drum map setup, we could now just come over here and you could make, just click on the plus sign, and now you could make your own particular drum map and customize it. Once you make it once, you could use it forever. There's probably a good chance that someone has made drum maps for Superior Drummer, or you could reach out to Superior Drummer and have them make the drum map for you. And I just see articulations make it hard to enter manually, or is there a way to map the articulations? I'm not sure which articulations that you're mapping for Superior Drummer. I don't really run Superior Drummer, but if you could let me know. But I think that you could just kind of manually do it. It's one of those things that you may put off for a couple of days, and it takes you 20 minutes to actually do it. So it's not that hard to make a new drum map. All right, next question from Ryan Thomas. Hi, Greg. Could you please show us how to set up lyrics using the marker track? Okay, so let's come over and we'll just jump back to our previous project. So we're going to just go ahead and make some lyrics. So I will come over. Let's go to this. So we don't have any. So let's make a marker track that's going to be for the lyrics. Okay, so I'm going to select this and let's add a marker track underneath. Okay. Okay, and we'll just call this lyrics. Okay, so we'll kind of just start off. And let me put this in the right.
It all began.
All right, so let's say, all right, so if I come here, I'm just going to click into marker track and start typing, it all began. All right.
It all began the moment I laid eyes on him.
All right, so I'm going to.
He touched my hand.
So I'm going to hold down the shift key and we'll say, moment I laid eyes on him. Oh, I'm just. All right, so as soon as we kind of just hold down the shift key, I'll come to the beginning of the line here. All right, so.
The moment I laid eyes on him, he touched my hand.
All right, so again, just come right over here, shift key. All right.
Eyes on him, he touched my hand, and the sky turned magic blue. And I was all at once, he kissed my face, the world was like.
All right, so just come here. So you could just, or if you wanted to, you could just say, here, I'll just type this in. And this guy turned, it's magic blue, I think. Let me just uncapitalize it. All right, so now as we just kind of come over here, we can just say, okay,
It all began the moment I laid eyes on him. He touched my hand and the sky turned magic blue. And I was all it was.
All right, I'll just take it off the arranger track. Sorry.
And I was falling.
So again, you could just come right over here and just say, okay, I want to shift, and this would open up the text field.
And I was falling before I knew all it was.
So now if we want to just be able to navigate by the lyrics, all we have to do now is just kind of come right over here. Let's open up our lyrics track. And so the singer's like, oh yeah, you know, because I've rarely been in a vocal session where the singer's like, go to measure 42 beat 3. They just say, oh, you know, go to he touched my hand. I want to do that line again. So now you could just click right here.
He touched my hand.
And you could just say, so you could look at the lyric and immediately jump.
And I was falling before I knew.
And you can see that it's automatically going to update right there. So just a matter of a couple minutes, you could have, and if you copy and paste, if you have the lyrics in like a project notepad, you could just kind of copy and paste each line in. So if you wanted to come directly over to your project notepad, like you could have all your lyrics here and then just copy and paste as the markers are dropped in, and that way you could quickly navigate to different parts of the lyrics. So we could just come again right over here, and you know, when the singer says a line, you could search and navigate right there. All right, you see Terry Gray checking in from Minneapolis. He says, Nuendo 14's incredible update DAW project compatibility has been a game changer for me consolidating old projects to Nuendo. So, yeah, I've had a lot of people have been able to migrate their projects from Studio One and kind of graduate to Nuendo. All right, so we see Soren from Sweden. This has been that you just got back from her friend's funeral today, and it was horrible. He's a bit down, so sorry to hear about that. It's always tough. We'll be thinking about you. Hopefully we can try to bring a little happiness to Soren today. All right, Artist Knows Love says, hope everyone's great. Thank you, Greg, for everything. Nuendo 14 is a welcomed addition. Thank you. So, yeah, it's a wonderful product planning and engineering team that does it. I just kind of get to show kind of what they do. So a lot of hard work from many people. All right, so we have Manny checking in from Santa Barbara, California. All right, so we see, hi Greg, I'm running Cubase 14 on Windows. How do you get icons for your external instruments? So the external instruments generally don't have like track icons. So if you had like an external instrument editor, so you know, because where we get the actual like plugin icon from, so let's say if I come here and we add an insert, so let's say we'll come over, let's say if we go to like the Bit Crusher, so most plugins will have like a little camera, so that when we open them up here that we could just simply take a photo, and when we go to our media bay to VST instruments or VST effects, that we can see all these icons. Since the external instrument doesn't have a plugin interface to work with, there's no way to kind of populate and capture a camera. What you can do is if you click right here, you could actually load up user pictures. So it's not an icon that shows up here, but when you're working in the project, You could import your own user pictures. So say if we go to factory, so say, okay, and they coincidentally look mysteriously like Yamaha instruments. So you can say, okay, I want to have an organ or a synthesizer. I could come over here, and then we could, when we go into our mix console, we could actually just kind of come right over here and be able to have user pictures. I know people that will save kind of like amplifier settings and stuff like that within. They'll take a picture of how their amp is set up and mic'd, and store that as a track picture so it could be archived. But there isn't a way with external to create a plugin image for it because there is no image of the plugin to generate. So, but you can have external pictures attached to the track itself and store that within the track preset. All right, wonderful to see Jan from Cubase Index. Wonderful to see Neil Patton on. I work with Neil at Yamaha. He's one of the best district managers for Southern California area. I could drive around Boston better than anyone I know. All right. Let's go. Get back. All right. My Chatfield jumped. All right, just find my spot. Okay, so Soren's question, is there a way to get a MIDI pattern repeated with different chords from chord pad, like a reggae backbeat pattern in C, A minor, F, G in a simple way? All right, so let's say we want to find, so I'll come over here to, we go to my project here, so let's jump off project. Okay, so just all right, so if you want kind of like a reggae type pattern with the just get my phone out of the way here on my keyboard. All right, so so the chord pad's going to trigger one particular chord. So let's come over here and say, okay, I want to select all, and it's delete, or I guess we don't have to. So let's say we want to do, so let's find a playing chord. So let's create a pattern. So let's look for a quick pattern. We'll go to factory presets. So now if we want to come here, we could play. So I'm just playing this one note, this F note, and it's going to be triggering those chords. So, and we could try some different. So I'm just playing the single note here, like that we see in this range here. So at that point, we can just kind of select your different, and you could just drag and drop any pattern that you have. So let's see if we go into, let's see if we go into like Hallian Sonic here. And with Hallian Sonic, we can just, so say I want to, all right, so now let's say if we're here, so let's look at Hallian Sonic itself and see if we go into the Flexphraser. So let's go to program, and let's go to the Flexphraser, and we can activate this and see if there's maybe like kind of a reggae type thing. So let's say if we want to come over here, piano and keyboard, so let's say a reggae pattern. So when I come over here, let's try. So if you find a particular pattern, so what we can do now is just simply drag this pattern out from the, so if we record this, so we're going to now come over, click on in Groove Agent or in Hallian Sonic, click on the record button. And we will just select kind of the Rhodes pattern here. All right, so now I'm going to drag that pattern out to the project, and I'm going to now just drag this pattern into the chords, and now I could so you could take your own kind of user pattern. So let's say if we wanted to get rid of like the low notes on this particular pattern, let's say the bass notes here, let's get rid of that. Let's go back to the chord pads and drag those in. And then you could experiment and just trigger the chord pads to trigger a particular pattern. All right. All right, we see Michael Marshall checking in from Somerset in the UK. We have Darshana Rajapaksha saying hi. Thanks for joining us. All right, we have Raw Justice Hip Hop checking in from Capitol Heights, Maryland, just kind of across the river and up a couple miles for me. Thanks for joining us. We have Patrick Emanuel A joining. Thanks for being online. All right. We have Arif B checking in from the Netherlands. We see Rob Schmedeke from Tarpon Springs says, thank you, Greg, for the document you sent me. It's very helpful. Do you know if there are any tutorials on Artifact Guitar? I was specifically wondering in the settings how the pattern retrigger works. So I believe that Dom Sagalis did a video on that, so check that out. You can probably see it on the VST Instruments channel, so you could look for that. All right, wonderful to see Kerwin Young on, and Darren Flake see Parabot 2 on as well. We have Captenergy Music from outside Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Thanks for being on. We see Jan from Cubase Index. We see Val from Vienna. It says, greetings from Vienna, where I had all my Cubase and all third-party plugins reinstalled yesterday. All right, we see John Barry checking in from south coast of England, from English Riviera. All right, we have Rick France from checking in from the Pacific Northwest. All right, Tim Weinheimer asks, hello, Greg. It seems that notes editor operation has changed a little bit when I edit chord notes. I guess positions and lengths can give you a demonstration, please. So let's say if I have it says when I edit chord notes, positions, and lengths, can you give a demonstration? So, maybe if you could let me know what exactly had changed. So let's say if we're here and we want to, change, let's say if we're here and we want these all to be like, we could have our quantize set here. So let's say if I have my quantize set to 16th notes, that we can come over and be able to kind of edit the position and length of notes. If your quantized value is set to something like where mine was set to a whole note, that this will automatically snap to the length based on the quantization value. Or if we choose to have snap turned off here, I believe that we could just freely resize. But if we wanted to like snap the length or position to particular notes, if we hit the J key, we'll turn the snap on and off. So that could give you kind of an indication that it's going to snap the lengths to the quantization value, or the beginning of notes can be snapped once this is turned on. But let me know, Tim, if there's a particular thing that changed. Okay. All right, Patrick Emanuel A asks, hi Greg, I have one pattern beat in pattern 1. Now I've duplicated it. I want to change C1 to F4. If I do all the other patterns also changing to F4, want pattern to be changed to F4 in the lower zone. So let me know if this is in the pattern editor. So let's say if we're doing this in the pattern editor. Okay, so let's say if we are here and we go to, let's say, our pattern editor. Okay, so let's see. It says I have a pattern of beat in pattern 1. So let's say, let me just go ahead and solo this particular track. Okay, so let's say I'm here. All right, so we have a pattern. So let's say I'll just quickly create a generic pattern here. All right, so let's just okay, so I have a pattern of beat in pattern 1. Now I've duplicated. Now I want to change C1 to F4. Okay, so let me duplicate the pattern here. Okay, so we will choose to duplicate. So we have pattern 1, pattern 2. Says now I want to change C1 to F4. If I do all the other patterns, also changing to F4. Want pattern 1, pattern 2 to be changed to F4. Okay, so let's say I want to change this to a different pitch. So let's say to my high conga. All right, now let's go back to pattern 1. So I think if you change it from here, that these note assignments are going to be kind of constant. So let's see if we could. So what we may have to do is to just, and I don't think that we can copy just that particular lane. So let's say if I wanted to do this on F4 or on a different pitch, let's say conga low, instead, that I would just come over here. So now when I go back to pattern 1, because the pattern is still playing back through the same note assignments here, but when we go to, let's say, pattern 2, so, you know, when we switch to patterns, the patterns are still routed to the same notes if we change this particular note assignment. So we don't necessarily, you know, these aren't tied to the pattern. So if that's what you're running into, you would just need to mimic this same behavior on a different slot for that to work, because the slot is going to remain constant regardless of what the pattern is. So let me know if I'm misunderstanding, Patrick, what's going on with that. All right, we have Rolf Schild sending greetings from Germany. We have Kerwin Young from Atlanta. All right, Estrada Bass says, yes, we can hear you now. All right, sorry about that. See, Val says OBS had an update that messed up his settings too. So, all right, we have Matt Elston checking in from London, UK. Thanks for joining us. All right, Dallas LaRue just says, I have had Funk Essentials for a long time, but it won't let me activate it now. I have tried everything. It says it's an e-licenser issue, but it doesn't even show up there. So check, because I think Funk Essentials, you could migrate it from the e-licenser directly over to the Steinberg licensing. So let's say if we go to the Steinberg Activation Manager, and I may not have it on my system, but let me just load this up. So make sure that you have like your Funk Essentials. You'll probably see it show up here. So you could just see, make sure that you don't have to actually activate it like directly here. So check in the Steinberg Activation Manager and see if it is activated, or if it's, you have an indication that it's activated. It could be kind of transitioning from the Steinberg e-licenser to the Steinberg licensing system, which is kind of the account-based system. But just check your Steinberg Activation Manager and make sure that it is activated there. And let me know what you see, Dallas. All right. All right. All right, so we have RFB, and we discussed this on Tuesday's live stream. It says, in key commands, focus, I can't find confirm in the list. Can someone help me to find this, please? Thanks in advance. I also asked Cubase for help, but need to wait. So maybe if other people could see, because when we did this last week and we went to key commands, and if we go under the focus category, we'll see confirm, which is by default this option shift space. I believe that's a factory setting. So maybe if other people could check just to make sure if they have this particular function, and let ERF know if they actually see it there. It works in all of my systems, but he says he doesn't have it, so maybe someone else could confirm. All right, we have Uno Momento checking in from Finland. We have Troca checking in from Portugal. All right, so we have Troca says, I got my Seek track, which is this cool little Yamaha synths. Tell your bros at Yamaha rocks. I'll let them know. But I'd like to get them to make the app dark themed. My site can't handle the app. Tried to forums and all. So I'll pass it on to my counterparts in the synthesizer division. All right, we have Jan Philstrom. It says, question, I'm a beginner, Cubase Pro. I use waves as favorite tracks, but stored as user preset.xps format. So usually, let me just check what XPS format is. Let me just check and see. I'm not sure if that's it's an XML paper specification. So that I don't think that is a Cubase. If we want to save like a favorite, like let's say if we have an audio file here. Let me just come over. So say if we have an audio file with the plugin, we could save it as a track preset. So if I come here, we'll call this Jan March 21st. I'll spell your name correctly. So let's say Jan March 21st, and I'll hit OK. So now if we come over to, let's say, user presets, track presets, audio, so we'll see our Jan March 21st. So let's select this. I'm going to right click and reveal in Finder, and I believe that it's a track preset file, but so it's a .track preset. So I'm not sure if the XPS is like saving a particular favorite setting in the Waves plugins, but and if that's the case, then it's kind of outside of Cubase. But the track presets, when we save favorites, are just going to be stored as .track preset file. All right, Val asks, question, is there a preference that if we select clips events and hit solo, that these are all set to solo so I don't have to go in track by track? So I think that if we come over, let's say if I have like these tracks and let me just select these tracks and let's say we hit solo. So it could be that a couple of preferences might affect this. So one is, so if we go to editing, we will see that I think under project and mix console, you might see let's see, it might be just under editing of track selection follows event selection. So if this preference is turned on, so I'll hit apply and let's come over and I'll hit OK. So let's say if I have this track soloed or no track soloed, when I come over here and let's say I'll just select these particular events. So if I select these events and hit solo, that won't have any impact. The original solos will be intact. But if we go to the preferences or settings and we have track selection follows event selection. So now when I select these two events and I hit solo, the tracks are selected. When you hit S, those will be selected as well. So let me know if that's helpful for you. All right, wonderful to see Michael Pierce on. from Grand Chapel Studios. All right, we have Lels, I guess maybe Sec, says, hey Greg, thanks for all your great work, much appreciated. I'm always happy to be sharing knowledge. All right, and question is, I love the, and my chat field just jumped on me. Let me see if I can get it back. Okay, so the question is, I love my Colossus Beatformer plugin VST 2.4. Cubase 14 does not load anymore. I know there's a little chance to activate the plugin, but maybe you have an idea. I tried to reactivate it, no luck. So Cubase 14 by default will kind of filter out VST2 plugins. If we go to your studio menu to your VST plugin manager, that we do that. So you'll see on the Windows platform, or if you're running on Mac OS in Rosetta mode, a little like enable VST2 plugins here, a little box. So just turn that on. By default, VST2 plugins are disabled, but they are currently they're disabled by default, but still compatible. So give that a try. So again, go to Studio menu to VST Plugin Manager, and you'll see probably here, I don't have it because I'm running natively in Apple Silicon, or VST2 plugins don't work. So at this point, just activate it there, then it should show up for you. See Kerwin's loving Nuendo 14. All right, so we see Val just asking about the dongle licenses. Can we transfer them all to Steinberg licensing? I've used vouchers always when they were mentioned on stream, but some libraries were missing in the last session. So check just to make sure that, not every single older library, depending on the company, if we're like working with a third-party company, they may not be migrating over. I would say, 97% of the libraries have transitioned over. So if you have a particular library that hasn't transitioned over, many of them have. And if you want to send me an email, I'd be happy to verify that particular licenses have migrated over for you. All right, we see Da Vinci Girl just saying hello from Bochum, Germany. We have Razel Zamini checking in from Denmark. Great to have you on as always. All right, so we see Rishab Saxena, how to convert audio samples into MIDI, like full melody, samples, loops. So when we do our MIDI conversion, we can figure out what the chords are, but it's not going to necessarily take a piano performance and convert that into MIDI. But if it's a monophonic audio source, we could do that. So let's take like this bass part here. So say. So if we want to convert this into MIDI, what we could do is take it into Very Audio. So double click, go into Sample Editor. We'll see the Very Audio tab on the left here. We're going to let it do its analysis. And now what we're going to do within Very Audio is we could say, all right, so let's come over here. And we'll just all right, so we'll have our MIDI notes laid out for us here. So let's say, so we'll have this little choose functions, and we'll say extract MIDI. So I will come over and now just kind of look at it and say, okay, we want to create a new MIDI track. Okay, so we created a new MIDI track. We're going to open up virtual, and now when we look at this, we could see that it's converted it into MIDI. I will open up a quick instrument track here. Let's go to, let's say maybe high and sonic and look for like a fretless bass. Okay, so now let's go ahead and play a little bit here. And let me just route this MIDI to, or I'll just drag this down. All right, so I'm going to adjust my MIDI. I'm just going to transpose this up an octave. So if we're kind of and let's play it with the original audio. So let's say I'll call this and now when we look at it, and I'll just come over here. I'm going to just change this name to bass guitar for the event. And now we look at it in the score editor. So that's how you can convert audio to MIDI. So again, it's going to be a monophonic source like a vocal, bass, saxophone. It's not going to do chords. All right. Okay, so we see DaVinci Girl says limitations. So it became impossible to create full-featured MIDI plugins as VST3. Also, they say in a mentor tone of VST2 MIDI plugins aren't supposed to be, since it's exploiting undocumented features of VST2. So I think obviously there's thousands of VST2 and VST3 plugins. So every company, the vast majority of companies don't seem to have problems with VST3 plugins. So I don't think that's a kind of an accurate statement if you look at the number of VST plugins that are available. So obviously more MIDI VST plugins than hardware over the entire development of MIDI. So there's tens of thousands of VST instrument plugins that are available. So I don't think it's accurate. All right. So you see Dallas LaRue just saying, can the new volume meter be used for gain staging? So yeah, definitely. So let's say if we were just kind of playing along here. So let's say we'll just take this example here. We wanted to kind of check gain staging. So let's say as we're
my sleeping refuge to blot out the tomorrow night. Arrogance you say, well you might be right.
So I will just come over here to
Eyes were all you see. I take your blood, now you belong to me.
So let's say if I just solo the bass, we can get, and let's look at a couple of different levels. So let's say, okay, we want to come here. Let's get this signal. And let me just adjust this to. So if I were to kind of just look at, like, my bass, we could say, okay, this is, pretty good. So I'm at, like, peaking around minus 12 dB roughly here. So this could give you an idea. So let's look at, let's say, our backing track now. So. And then if we wanted to bring both the elements together. So if you want to just listen to backing track. So just kind of soloing and taking different elements out, you can get a good idea of like what your gain structure is, relating to it in isolation and in context of the mix pretty easily. All right, we have 808 King from Northern Georgia, I believe. All right, and we have Vinny Sabatino from Sabatino Music Studios from Orlando, Florida. Great to see you on. So we see Shangaloo Music from Colombia, South America. Just a beginner in Cubase. I appreciate any tips. Yeah, so I think, let us know, obviously just kind of a Q&A format style, but I think one of the things, even if you, I think a lot of people learn a significant amount of information from other people's questions. So, but feel free to ask a question. There's no question that's too beginner or too basic to ask. So we're just here as a community to help you out, to make sure that you don't run into a brick wall in your workflow. If you're one mouse click away from happiness, we want to show you where that click is. All right, so Troka is just saying Cubase 14 is insane, but I was an 11, so I'm stunned with the difference. So. All right, Mark Madsen just says, hi Greg, congrats on Nuendo 14 being so cool. Moved my project folders to a different drive, and Kontakt doesn't see its MIDI instruments anymore. Anyway, Nuendo to take this into account. So I know that generally if we move the projects to a drive, most VST instruments, I'm not a heavy Kontakt user by any means, but we have a utility, and I think if you go to native access that you could see this, so I'm not sure, moving the project files should, when you load up the project and it loads a plugin, that plugin should look for its content. So if the plugin content hasn't changed, but just the program, like the project files have changed. So we'll take a look, and I think you could do this in native access. When we come over, there's something like we have what we call the library manager. So here we could take any of the samples and see exactly where they are, and we could move all of the content. The vast majority of instruments will, if the project folder is moved, unless you have stored all the sample content in the project folder, it shouldn't really impact what happens for the most part. With just about every plugin, is the plugin, when it's opened up, looks for its content path, looks for where its sound files are, kind of the engine, if you will, for all of those samples. And as long as it knows where those samples are and it's made that connection, then Kontakt should be able to kind of find it pretty easily. But but so I would check that and see. But I would think that moving the project folder wouldn't really have a significant difference on the content being found or not. All right. Just got a call from bassist Jeff Berlin. I'm just gonna text him real quick, so I'll call him after the live stream. He's my hero bassist. All right. He's why I studied music. All right. So thrilled to be able to help him. Okay, so you see Tim Weinheimer just says he's trying to reposition one note in a chord I'm playing, but it seems to move the whole chord or all the notes. Okay, thanks for the clarification, Tim. Let's take a look. Okay. All right, so let's make this obnoxiously large so it's easy to see. All right, so if I come here, generally it's always kind of based upon the selection. So if I come here and move and all the notes are selected, so I'll just take my snap off. So if all the notes are selected, they will all move. If one note is selected, we could just kind of move notes individually like this. So let me know if maybe you have multiple notes selected in the chord, or if all of the notes are selected, then they could all move. So that would allow us to enlarge the part if we will be asked. But if I'm only moving one note at a time, then that's all that's going to be moved. So what's moving is based on the context of what is selected. So let me know if you have multiple notes in a chord selected, or they're all just kind of tied together. So I don't think that there's a way to group the individual MIDI notes. I'll just try here. So now when I come over, so the events on the project window could be grouped, but the events always will kind of function independently. So let me know if you're doing the same way I am, or if I'm doing it differently than you are, Tim. All right, wonderful to see Mark Rabin on from Montana, where it's almost 50 degrees there today. And it says the weekend looks great. He's been deep in recording and he's surfacing to learn. So we'll all give a big woof to Mark Rabin's dog, Stella. All right. All right, we see Terry Gray just mentioned to Mark, asking if he moved a Kontakt sample library. If not, you have to redirect it to where it was moved to. All right, we have Nick Robb checking in from, it's like Nuremberg, Germany. Thanks for joining us today, or this evening for you. All right, we have John Costigan joining us from Kenosha, Wisconsin. He says, greeting from windy Wisconsin, and the like button light is lit. We have Ger Odeman saying hello from the Netherlands. Thanks for joining us today. All right. Sable Winters has joined us from the Bay Area in California, and she wants to see more likes. So everyone hit the like button. All right, you see Nick can't say this evening, but he's whacked the like button. We have Arze Lee saying hello from China. Thanks for joining. Especially it's very late there, or very, very early. We have Melvin Tenefo checking in from Sierra Leone. All right, artist known as Love says, hi Greg, I just want to say I have both Cubase and Window, both of version 14. I found it is best to stay updated and learn and use the newest tools. I appreciate all the features. All right, so we have kind of a follow-up question from Dallas LaRue. It says it shows an activation manager, but it shows the only one that is not activated, and it won't let me activate it. It says verification pending, expired. So Dallas, if you want to email me with your address that you have your My Steinberg account on, I'd be happy to pass it on to our support team in the U.S. I know you're based in the U.S., but I'd be happy to pass it on so they could probably get your they could get it resolved for you. All right, so we see Tim Weinheimer says, I'm also looking for an 80s Simmons drum set sound with gated reverb in set. Is there one in the Steinberg libraries, Groove Agent 5, or an expansion libraries kit? Yeah. You see Mark Ravens also mentioning that Dom has an 80s kit, but I think we could probably find some Simmons sounding drums. Let's take a look. Activate this project here. Okay. So let's look through maybe some of the beat agent kits. All right. So some of those sounds. I would say that the dancehall kit is pretty Simmons-esque. I haven't listened to a Simmons kit in a long time, but some of them are a little more kind of classic Roland drum machines. So like the dubstep when you come over here has some all right, so say and some of these sounds you could hear kind of like there would come with some of the gated reverb sounds. Yeah, so Vinyl Kit 2. And if you wanted to, if you wanted to do your own effects, if we come over to the mixer here, so here we don't have effects, but if we wanted to add, let's say, a reverb, and let's put just like a big room size. So, and then we'll make the time short. And as we come over here, so let's say we take this sound, we'll go to edit, and if we go to the amplifier section, now we could bring in So let's select, even though this has a bit of gate on it already. So any of the sounds that when we come over here, we could just select, you know, the amount of the aux for that gated reverb. So that's probably a pretty good set to work with there. And there's some other ones if you want to. Let's just see if there's. So, but yeah, check out like the Beat Agent SE kits, I think are pretty good. Let's see if the Alan Morgan kits might also work. So let's say Electro Pop Kit, and these are so that would be a good Simmons-esque type of sound. All right, my Chatfield just jumped on me, so let me. All right, Joe75 just says, hi, Greg. I have an issue with the score editor with drums voicing. If I play triplet, kick, tom, tom, and open the score editor, I see kick, rest, rest, even if the audio is okay. Any clue how to fix it? All right, so let me come over here. Okay, so I will, let's just put in a quick drum pattern here. So I will. All right, so let's say if I have this set, let me just. All right, let me just set these. Let me just. All right, I'll just sequence it in real quick. So let me just check my tempo here. Okay, yeah, I'll just take my auto quantize off. Sorry about that. Okay, so let's say we have this part and we want to see it as drum notation. So and it may be different in 13 and earlier in 14. So let's come over here, and we will go ahead and quantize this. So let me do eighth note triplets. All right, so now, if I don't hit the wrong button. All right, so okay, so let's go ahead, and I'm just going to call this by the name. I'm just going to call it drum kit, and we're going to name the event drum kit as well. So we'll call it drum kit. Now when we go to our score editor, we can see that just based on the actual name of it, that it's just going to do the triplets like that. So make sure that you have, I'll just move this note. It's there. So make sure that you have, like, it's labeled something like a drum map, and then when we go, we want to load up the drum map, so we're going to name it like drum kit for the event, and then when we go into the score editor, we could just see like our toms and triplets, and if we wanted to now paint in like let's say eighth notes, just standard eighth notes on the hi-hat, I could just kind of come right over here. We'll select our note tool, and if we wanted to just enter, but we could just see that we could just come right over here and see the notes. So make sure that you name it something like drum set, and you could come over to the instrument settings, and so if you go to the settings, go to instrument. So here we could choose a short name. We could choose the drum map. You could say the presentation, instead of a single line instrument, we could choose a 5-line staff, and then we could just come over and we could, just have this automatically do the drum notation for us right there. So even though we're playing different pitches, we're not, this is, we can see that this is going to be a kick drum. This will be tom 1, tom 2. If we wanted to put a snare in, we could again just come over here, and if we just put in our drum notes, that's how it would be indicated right there, and notate it correctly. So it looks like it's kind of doing everything, but make sure that you're actually, if you have the, when you go to the settings, click on the instrument, and you could make sure that you have the drum map loaded up so that it knows what sounds to notate, because the MIDI pitches that are triggering the samples don't line up with traditional drum notation. So let me know if that's helpful for you, Joe. All right, so we see from Val, it says track selection follows event selection was exactly what he's looking for. Thanks. So you're welcome. Yao Amen says, hi Greg, I'm using Cubase 12 Pro on Windows 11. I'm going to invest in a pair of headphones. Will I need to have a sound card to get details and low and high frequencies? So, I think a sound card can give you better fidelity, but there's lots of people that are using kind of the built-in audio interface for monitoring. I would say that if, the built-in sound card doesn't sound good with your headphones, that it's probably not the sound card's fault. A lot of people listen to music on headphones connected directly to a sound card, and that's always ideal to have a dedicated audio interface. But if you're just kind of working and you're not recording different aspects, then it would, I think you're probably fine with the sound card. So get a great pair of headphones that you could use for mixing and tracking. So. All right, so we see Diego Munoz it asks, hi, is there any key command to open edit channel on the stereo output? All right, so if it is selected, so let's say if we come over here, if I have this track selected, and let me just come over, so let's say we want to do I'll just check my key commands. Let's say we want to do edit channel settings, I think is the command. Okay, so let's say I want to assign it to a particular keyboard shortcut here. So now when I have a particular track selected, if I did this right, we should see the channel settings. So I just assigned a key command, or we could utilize the MIDI remote. So if I have my master channel selected, let's see if that works. All right, looks like this works. Let me just. Let me check the keyboard shortcut again. All right, so let me select. Doesn't look like it works on the master. Let me just try a different track here. All right, let me try from a MIDI remote. Maybe with a preference that I had set. So let me just. Okay, so I'm going to try from the MIDI remote here. Okay, so with the MIDI remote, I'll come over to the mix console. When I come here, we could open that. I come here, and that opens. Let me just check, see if I may have altered one preference for a question from last week that maybe I didn't reset. So we say editor content follows event selection. So let's apply that. So now I'll come here. I'll do the keyboard shortcut that we did. I'll try with the remote. So the MIDI remote seems to work as expected. So in that way, we could just do it on the selected channel. And if the master, if we want to do that from the project window, if we don't have the mixer, we can see our input-output channels. And then you could just come over here. Make sure and the key command's working there as well. So try to edit channel settings and make sure that you have the particular track selected that you want to see. Chazdu makes a great point that there are electronic drum kits in Halley and Sonic in addition to Groove Agent that to go through for kind of the Simmons type sounds. So we see Ger Ottoman asks about the pictures for VST effects and instruments in the media bay. Can they only be put in one by one, or is there a quicker way? So the quicker way is if the company actually installs, which I think Arturia does, that it actually installs the pictures as part of the program. The plugin installation will install the plugin picture. So that's obviously the quickest way. Otherwise, you'd have to load them up one at a time and take the picture. There isn't like a batch picture export. When I get a new plugin, like, the first time I open it up just to make sure everything is kind of working, I will, if I buy a couple of plugins, I'll open up each of the plugins and just simply take the picture the first time I'm opening it up to make sure that user interface is working, that it's making sounds, it's connecting with its licensing, but there isn't like a batch picture functionality for plugins. But there are plugin developers that now will install the plugin image into the folder, so it's automatically done for you. Okay, so Mark Rabin's just asking, when does the dongle disappear? So your dongle won't disappear. You won't be able to activate a new license after May 20th, I believe is the announced date. All right, so we see Michael Pierce has to sneak off for a while. He's probably doing a good guy thing and doing tutoring. Hope to see you back before the end of the live stream, Michael, for a soup recipe because everyone loves them. All right, so we see from Choka, Sweet Sensei, thank you. They should learn from Steinberg. Cubase got fully dark themed, and it's perfect for people with bad eyes like me. I need everything dark around me. Strange how the sequel track app is so light. Well, I'll definitely pass it along. All right, Gerald Ely's just saying good morning to all the Club Cubasers. Thanks for joining us from Martinez, California. Great to see Anthony Clark on. All right, Peter T asks, would you be able to go into detail how best to produce MIDI for guitar with a view in getting to sheet music, doing very fast rhythmic strumming with chords seems to rule out drawing arpeggios. So I guess what you could do is, if you were, when I see chord charts, so let's say if I wanted to see a chord chart for something, and I haven't played with this, and there's some additions in 1402 with this, but let me just take a quick look. So let's say I want to take this piano part here in this song, and let's do like a quick lead sheet. So generally, like strumming may not be actually notated per se a lot of times. So let's say I want to create a chord track. So I'm going to go to my project menu to chord track, and we're going to create chord events. And we will come over here, we'll see our chord events. And now what I want to do is I'm going to add a MIDI track. Okay. And I'm going to set the left and right locators. I'm going to create the same length, and let's go into our score editor. And since we have our MIDI track here, so we may be able just to, let's say if we wanted to indicate like a rhythmic pattern for the strumming. So let's say we'll just call this guitar lead sheet. So now we'll come over, look at it. Let's see if we could just put in let's say maybe like a grace note. All right, let me just turn off the so let's say we want to do like a rhythmic pattern. I'll just do like a regular note. Okay, so I think, and I haven't read good, I'm not a guitar player, but maybe you could do something along, just take it off of, so where we kind of give a rhythmic direction for the chords. So you might be able to do, you know, something along the lines of, okay, let's put in, okay, I'm in 6/8, that's why, okay. Okay, so let's say I want to put in, let's say dotted, sorry that I was being stupid, all right. All right, so let's say this is like our strumming pattern that we want rhythmically for the chords. I think that we might be able to, let's see if we go to the settings for this. I think that we could kind of just put in almost like different rhythmic values if we wanted to kind of show the rhythmic patterns, but we might have to, let me see if, so, you know, you could, so I would think that as a guitar player, if I saw something like this, but let's see if we could just change the note heads. I'm gonna do it in Darko. Okay, so let's say if we wanted to do this maybe as guitar tab, let me see if I remember how to do that. So let's say if we're doing this as a guitar, so I'm gonna just name the event, name the track, or let's go to the instrument settings, and let's define instrument type as being guitar. So say fretted instruments, and let's do. And we'll do, say, standard guitar tuning, and when we see this, we could just see something like tablature only. And let's see if we do it, show the rhythms. So you might be able to just kind of show like some of the different functions here, and I could play with this over the weekend, but here you could get an idea of kind of what the rhythmic interpretation is with the chord charts. I know all the years as a bass player that I played in jazz ensemble, like I never had a written part. I would just have the chord charts, and occasionally you would have like little rhythmic indicators. So that's often what guitarists would do. All right. I see DaVinci Girl says, does not help, but the mandatory style, what is used against developers, let me personally lost any trust to Steinberg products. I'm just not willing to support such my money that I'm working hard for. So, I think, I don't understand, I know that perhaps you have a plugin or a few plugins maybe that haven't migrated to VST3, but, the VST3 migration started 16 years ago. So, a VST3 plugin that was released at inception in the United States could have a driver's license. So I think that if companies haven't migrated over, there's obviously a number of amazing synthesizers and instruments, the most widely used plugin format in the world are supporting VST3, that if a developer can't come up and do VST3, that maybe I personally wouldn't support a developer that's not supporting current technology. So, like, I wouldn't buy a brand new car that's 16 years old now, or I wouldn't buy a brand new computer from 16 years ago and turn it on today and expect to use it. So, but again, if you could let me know why you think VST3 is bad. I know I've seen different things, but they don't seem to be, I'm not sure if it's factually correct. And you could still run VST2 plugins. And you can't run VST2 plugins on natively on Apple Silicon, and that's not a Steinberg decision. You could reach out to Apple and contact them as to why they made that decision, and the whole industry has to kind of adapt to that decision. We see Darren Flake just says that Steinberg's VST2s rarely use VST3 has more capacity, and they all work fine. People rarely use VST2 or even clap. See Gerald Ely just saying Jeff Berlin's one of his favorites. Yeah, he was very inspirational to me. All right. All right, Mark Rabin is saying Stella says woof back to everyone. All right, so we see from Val just says, how can I stop my group buses showing left and right sends individually into send effects and routing section? All right, so let's say if let's go to a quick group track here. All right, so I'm going to send all my drums to a group. All right, so I'm going to add a group track to all of my drums. So now all of my drums are being fed to this group. All right, and this question is, how can I stop my group buses showing left and right sends individually in the send effects and routing section? All right. All right, so is it that when, let's say if I add a group track here, okay, so, and if I want to send this to the group, so let's say if I come here to my send, and then I want to send this to group 2, all right, so when I come here, I could send this okay, so how can I stop my group buses showing left and right sends individually? Okay, so let's look at the group bus here. So if we go here to the group bus, so let's say I want to send this to group 1. Now all these, I'm not seeing the left and right individually. In the send effects and routing section. So if it's in the channel settings valve, so let's say if we come here, make sure that the panning isn't set, and depending on like your combined panner, so if you want to right click in the panner, you could have kind of the balance panner, or if you go to the stereo, right click here, if it's the stereo combined. So let me know if you're in the panning and you right click, so maybe you could switch toggle between the combined panner and the stereo balance panner for the send going to the group. So let me know if that makes sense. All right, so you see from Da Vinci Girl, it says, yes, for guitars, for example, the last guitar that was developed by Steinberg, I really would not use if you give me money that I use them. The Patchman music guitar sounds that was developed for VL. So, you know, if you're talking about artifact guitar that's not developed by Steinberg, that's a third-party company that makes artifact guitar, and we sell it through our online store. But that's not a Steinberg product. So if we open up, if it's artifact guitar, which I think you're talking about, so if we open up the instrument and we open it in Hallian Sonic, so it plays back through Steinberg instruments, but when we come over to artifact guitar, you know, this is a company that's making, that's making an instrument for Steinberg, so we sell it. But it's not a Steinberg created instrument, and different companies will offer different types of products. So, you know, just because we sell it doesn't mean that we developed the artifact guitar. And we also see from Da Vinci Girl, so it was developed for, so I'm not sure if this is a continuation. The Patchman music guitar sounds that was developed for VL70M are from sonic quality much better than what Hallian offers us now, and they come with the 80s as physical modeling. Well, you know, and also you have to realize that the VL70M has been discontinued for a number of years, so I'm not sure if the Patchman music guitar is playing back in the VL70M, but, you know, there's physical modeling. Yamaha kind of pioneered that technology in the early 90s, but it's obviously not available as a current product, and if it was probably tearing up the market, I'm sure Yamaha would be selling it. All right, because I know Yamaha loves to provide tools that musicians love. It's what Yamaha does. All right, so we see Tim Weinheimer says you answer my question on moving one note in the chord in the editor. Thanks. So thanks for letting me know. All right. So my chat field jumped. Let me see if I can. Okay, so we have a question. Hello, Greg. The selection tool excludes MIDI notes that do not appear after the start of the selection when copying and pasting. Is there a way to include them even if they are cut? Okay, so let me just jump back to a different project. Okay. Okay, so let's. All right, so so we see Hello Greg selection tool excludes MIDI notes that do not appear after the start of a selection when copying and pasting. Is there a way to include them if they are cut? Okay, so let me just, so let's say if I have a selection of MIDI notes here, the selection tool excludes MIDI notes that do not appear after the start of the selection. So maybe what you, I'm not sure if I'm totally understanding, but if we want to use like the range tool, so let's say if I extend this event here and all right, so the selection tool excludes MIDI notes that do not appear after the start of the selection when copying and pasting. Is there a way to include them even if they are cut? So maybe you want to use like if we use the range tool in the MIDI editor, and then we can come over here and copy just like, and this would include the range even if it was cut. So let's say if I'm here and we can see that the range is not selecting the length, so we see that the F3 note is longer than this. So if I move this, we're not copying over the entire length. We'll see that those three notes at the end are all the same length, but we just copied the range of the notes. So let me know if that's helpful for you or if I'm misunderstanding the question. All right, wonderful to see Michael Teams checking in from Weatherford, Texas. Thanks for joining today. The virtual ice cream distribution will begin. All right. And Michael says the wind is back in Texas. Okay, Darren Flake wants people to press the like button. Michael Teams, don't apologize for being late, but everyone's always happy when you're here. All right, so seeing some discussion of impedance on headphones between Jazz Dude and Darren. Sorry if I missed a question on that. Okay, it's probably going back to the headphone out on the laptop. All right. All right, so Michael Teams has granted my family and myself 1 gallon of strawberry ice cream. All right, you see Michael Teams has gotten his Kurzweil back. All right, so Mark Raven says woof, and if you have not hit the like button, please move your cursor over to the thumbs up icon and click. Simple, and you'll have done something wonderful for us all. Okay, all right, see more discussion on headphones. All right, so we see Steve Allen says, greetings, Greg and all, making a MIDI remote. Is there a way to make a rotary jog control? Did it in generic remote, okay, for that same Korg Nano Control Studio. So I think you may need to use 2 buttons, but if you come up here, I think the Nano Control is, only going to be transmitting MIDI information in one direction. So, but let's come over to my Nano Control here. So let's go to my MIDI remote. So I want this knob, and we'll just come over here. I think if we go to jog, or maybe scrub. Let's say shuttle play. All right, so say I want to do shuttle play 2 times, let's say for this knob, and let's do shuttle play reverse 2 times for this knob. Okay, so now if I come over, so we can kind of go backwards or forward. So if you want to do kind of scrubbing, you can kind of set the range. So try the shuttle play commands. So if you go to shuttle play and just kind of search in the MIDI remote, and you could have different, different values for that as well. All right, great to see you on, Steve. Hope you're well. All right, James Daly asks, is there a way to record drums into stems, each part separately, like snare, kick? Of course, interesting if the MIDI patterns also can you record, say, acoustic kit with a percussion kit at the same time. So, yeah, let's take a look at it. So we may have to do just a little bit of mapping here. So let's say, do new project. And you could save this as a track preset or track archive. So let's go ahead and add an instrument track. I want to make it, let's say, Groove Agent, SE. Everyone is aware of my favorite kit that I use. Okay, so let's say now I want to come over here. Let's Okay, so I'm going to do my routing. So let's say, okay, I want my kick to go out of output 2. I want my snare to go out of output 3, hi-hats out of output 4, toms out of output 5. Okay. So we could see all these here. So now what I want to do is let's add, let's say 5 audio tracks. Okay, so let's say this audio track, I want its input to come from kicks. I want this input to come from snares, this input from hi-hats, this input from toms, and I want this input for like the whole stereo out. So now when I come over, and let's play a pattern here. So if I'm just playing, I could go, let's record the MIDI and the audio simultaneously. So all right, so now that we've just routed the outputs when we want to look at, and let's say if I just now record, I'll just set my MIDI input here from Groove Agent as well. So we'll just say, okay, let's get to Groove Agent. So now as I play, so now we could record the MIDI and the audio all stemmed out. So now as we look at it, we can see our MIDI, and then we just have the outputs of the instrument. Say like the room and overhead mics. So, and we have just our MIDI playing there. So that's how you can do it. So once you have defined the outputs, add audio tracks, and then for the inputs, you could just simply, so let's say we'll come to the audio track, and those outputs that we've defined is our kick, snare, hi-hat, toms, our main out. We can just simply use those as the inputs for other tracks. All right, another question. So say each part, like it says, also can you record, say, acoustic kit and percussion kit at the same time? So if we have the full Groove Agent, that will come with the percussion kit. So let me open up instrument track here. So I want to go to the full Groove Agent. Okay, so let's do, I'll choose a different. All right, so we have all right, and I'm going to load up a percussion agent. I may not have my percussion agent loaded up here, but let me just I'll load up a different agent here. So let's say I want to do like laser beams for this agent here. Alright, so what I want to do is I will come over, we'll sync this to the transport. And I'm going to just add a MIDI track here. And this we're going to set as Groove Agent Kit 2. So I'm going to come here, so that's going to be, I'll do Kit 1 here. So we'll say my input is coming from Groove Agent 1, so that'll be the first agent here. Okay, so I'm adding this track, so I'm going to add it 2. And for this Groove Agent track, I want its input to be, I want the input, the MIDI input of this track to be coming from Groove Agent Kit 1. So now as I hit record here, so we have 2 agents, one kind of doing more percussion, one doing more traditional drums. So as I record enable these 2 tracks, so I'll come right over here, hit record. And for this one, we want to set this to MIDI channel 2. Sorry about that. So now we are recording. Groove Agent 1 into this track, and this agent into the second track. So if we look at this, we can see that their MIDI notes are going to be different and the parts are going to be different, but that's how. So when you set the input, this is going to be MIDI channel 1, 2, 3, 4, and you set the MIDI input here. So, and you'll have for each, and within the full Groove Agent, you have 4 individual agents, and you could just set which one the MIDI data is going into, and make sure that this is going to be MIDI channel 1 that plays this sound. So as we listen to it again, and I'll choose not to have this follow. So if we listen to just this drum, and then we bring this in, and we want them to both play at the same time. So you could do it like that. So yeah, you could definitely record 4 agents all in simultaneously without any issues. All right, so we see Ben Tyerman's using a Mac Pro from 2014. It's great that you got that much life out of it. All right, wonderful to see Suede TV and Recording Studio from New Jersey, if I remember correctly, checking in. Thanks for joining us today. All right, so we have a Lenovo Pad Pro 5i laptop, Intel Core Ultra 9 processor, 32 gigs RAM, 1 terabyte SSDs. This laptop going to run the biggest and most complex projects without freezing tracks. You know, if you wanted to do 14,000 tracks at once, it may not run. You could get a lot of performance out of that laptop. So, but everyone's perception of what a big project is, you know, like, when I started, it was, you know, like 48 tracks was phenomenal on analog tape with virtual tracks in MIDI. You know, now I know composers that don't start without 4,500 tracks active. So, me just... All right, trying my Chatfield jump. Let me just see if I can... Okay. All right, so we see someone else that's looking for the laptop link from Ben Tyerman. All right. Or I guess from Lenovo IdeaPad Pro. And Ben Tyerman's just talking about his older Mac that's still doing lots of tracks. All right, so we just see the comment, I'm buying from John Lewis, UK, and want to spend the least money for a laptop arriving tomorrow. If lots of tracks, RAM hungry, VST effects, and instruments, which is the cheapest laptop on John Lewis. So, yeah, maybe I think they're based in the UK. So maybe if someone's had experience, they could pipe in. All right, we see Gerald Ely has to take off. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you back on Tuesday. All right, we have David M. checking in from Liverpool. Says the clocks have not moved back. A bit slow, but they only moved back so we can match up with Cubase live stream. So it's a great way of looking at it. So, but glad you can make it today. Wonderful to see Graham Witcher on from Oxford. Michael Teams just says Daniela is having a hard time using the system. Maybe she should try another one. So I think she spent a lot of money on a Windows 7 Fairlight system. So maybe there's a reason someone else sold it. All right, so you see Jazz Dude posted a screenshot from Val. So let me see if I could take a look at that real quick. Okay, so I'm just looking at so I'm looking at screenshot of Val's group tracks. And let me see if I could recreate this quickly. So let's say if I add a group track here in my VST connections. So I'm going to add group track. So let's say if I call this guitar bus, like the title. We see under the output routing. So I'm not sure if you have, Val, maybe renamed the outputs on your all instruments. So here we see kind of the output routing, which is generally, so maybe if we come over here, we have the outputs routed. So let me see if I add an output here, and I'm going to call this all instruments. So I'm just going to change the name here. All right, now when I go to my group effects, let's say I go to my group effects here, and instead of sending it here, I send it to all instruments. And let me see if I could refresh my memory on just on the question. Just scroll back, look for Val's question. Thanks for sharing that, Jazz Dude. All right, so I think it's going back to how can I stop my group buses showing left and right sends individually in the send effects and routing section. All right, so maybe if we're here, all right, and we're going to look at the screenshot one more time here. All right, so when we look at this, let's say we go to our group effects, and I'm just going to add another group. So I'm not sure if, so, and it might be that you're seeing it because it's, like maybe the output isn't being, so let's see if we come over here to group. So you see that when it kind of pops here, that it's in the screenshot, it's showing like a little, almost like a little stereo out here. So let's say if we're here in the group, so if you don't want to see the left-right output, yeah, so mine aren't showing up like that. So I'm not sure what is causing like the little, but maybe, so it looks like it's a stereo group. So just out of curiosity, Val, if you send that to the guitar bus, let me know if you see like the little, the routing area here, or if you're adding, let's see if it's, maybe it's a mono, maybe it's a child bus. So let's see if I come here and I add, so if I right click and we say remove group track, let's see what happens there. All right, so I'm going to add a group, and let's set its audio output here to all instruments. So if I right click here, let's say, it looked like we could add that by right clicking and add all mono child buses to that. So maybe you added the mono child buses, but let's see if we could, let's see if I click on the mono child buses here. So maybe just right click on it and say remove the group track, and that will, seems to get rid of the left and right outputs. So you may have added a child bus accidentally, but let's say if I come here, right click and then remove, let me know if that works for you, Val. And thanks for sending your the image. That was very helpful. Appreciate it. And thanks, Jazz Dude, for posting it and sharing it with me. All right. Let me scroll back to where we were. Okay. See, Blue Jedi is just mentioning that he still uses a VST 2.2 from 1999 using Cushview or Cushview / Element as a VST3 wrapper, may be an option. All right. Okay, reading through comments. All right, so we see a comment from Brilliant Thanks Ben. Says, I have a single that worked out brilliantly. Anything you want? Because in it I used only Steinberg effects and it ran. I could choose the keyboards. All right, Anthony Clark asks, hi Greg, question, when using plugins emulation, some have mono and stereo version. I was monitoring a vocal and a plugin made the signal mono. How do I know if the plugin is in mono or stereo? Thanks. So sometimes when you're dealing with that, so let's come over, let me just find a guitar track here we can show this on. Okay, so it's not necessarily the plugin that you have to worry about. You know, if it's a VST3 plugin and it's kind of a holdover to VST2, because VST2 often you would need to have whatever the channel configuration is, the VST plugin will adapt to it by default. So let's say, let me just bypass my settings here. So let's say we'll take our guitar part. So we have a mono guitar. So if I go to an insert and let's put a reverb on. All right, and let me adjust the mix here. Now that guitar is a mono track, so the reverb, when we're running it as an insert, is mono. Now there's a little button here that you'll notice that we could take this track and take the processing from mono to stereo. So when I come here, we'll listen to the reverb especially. So now it's mono. I click the button and we'll make it stereo. So now the reverb is in stereo. So there's no need to run a separate instance, because it could be just on how the track is set to process. So if I switch this back to mono, the reverb or delay or other effects will be in mono. If I switch it to stereo, where we see two circles kind of on top of each other overlapping, now that's in stereo. So you don't have to, and some plugins still, you know, will, and I find it really unnecessary. I got a call from Peter Frampton a couple weeks ago about this with some of his UAD plugins. You know, he's like, oh, you know, how do I get because he's a big fan of taking a stereo source and putting a mono delay on it, or putting a mono reverb. You know, and Phil Ramone was also very adept at using two reverbs, like two plate reverbs, not stereo, but he would run one plate reverb, you know, distinctly on the left channel, one plate reverb distinctly on the right channel, hard panned. And like Peter was having a hard time, you know, figuring out, oh, how do I do this with a stereo plugin and make it mono? So we could just simply come right over here and just switch that particular button. But VST3 plugins, if you put it on a 5.1 channel, it'll output 6 channels. You put it on a stereo channel, it's working in 2 channels, but the channel itself in Cubase, you could set to be mono or stereo for this particular processing. All right, wonderful to see Jesse Carmichael. He'll be our celebrity guest today. I hope you're well, Jesse. Great to see you on. Hey, Greg, hope you and the fam are doing great. So loving the latest update. Curious if there's any workaround to attach LFO modulators to parameter of third-party plugins. I couldn't get some to link. So it's basically, it works with any VST plugin. So if I wanted to just come over here, so it's designed to work with third-party plugins, and if you have problems, you can reach out to me. I'd be happy to kind of remotely take a look at your setup. But let's say if we wanted to jump to this project, and whether, so the LFOs aren't limited to just working with built-in plugins. So let's say if we come over here to this track. All right, so let me turn this down to get my gain structure a little better. All right, so now when we come over here and we go to the modulators, let's see if I... All right, I've accidentally hit a button here on my MIDI remote. Let me just move that. I'll just reload the sound. All right, so now when we come, to the modulators, and, so there's a couple ways to add the modulators to different parameters. So let's open up the instrument here. So you could actually just kind of right click on the parameter itself and go to the modulators. So let's say, okay, I want to take the filter cut off. So now, so let's say if I want this to go, and I want this to be faster, we could adjust kind of the rate, and we could adjust the amount here. Now we could also just come over, and because we're on this particular track, so one thing to be aware of is, if we have an effect that's on a different track, or we're running the effect in a group track, that those plugins would need to be on this particular track for the modulation. So let's say I want to take that and let's add an effect on this particular track. So let's say maybe like a volume, or let's do like a panning, or we'll just do a volume. It's easy to hear. So on this particular track, that when we come over, and all the plugins would again work the same way. So let's say, okay, we grab our volume, and I want to do a different, let's say more of a shaper, and I wanted this for my volume. Let's drag this down. So now I want to, just if we had the learned function here, and let's make this. So, but any plugin parameter would work, but make sure that that plugin is on the particular track. So third-party built-in plugins should all work. And if you still have problems, just reach out to me, Jesse. I'd be happy to remotely take a look at your system. And it's great to see you. I hope you and your family are well. All right, reading through comments. All right, just reading through comments here still. See more ice cream distribution from Mr. Teams. See, Ben Tyron just says, notice that the modulators are syncing better with the 14.02 update. All right, we see from James Daly, says, thank you, Greg, just what I was looking for. Ben Tyron just says planned obsolescence. So it's some computer companies kind of business model. They don't want you to use the same computer for 11 years. All right. Okay, so we see from Steve Allen says, thanks Greg, the Chord Control Studio continuous rotary jog. So maybe I have the Nano Control in mind, so I'm not sure if maybe you have a different script, but if you want to email it to me, I'd be happy to take a look at it, Steve. That'd be great. All right. Let's see, more discussion of computers. So, and Jazz Dude has great performance with his Ryzen system. So, yeah, my son got his first gaming PC, and he's a Ryzen guy. All right. So, great discussion on people going back and forth between Mac and PC, and I always like to, how I always look at it is I tell people sometimes that all of the computers are great and they all suck, so they all have but I think it's so much better than what computers used to be. All right, so I think I'm out of the questions there. Let's get to some of the questions that were mailed in. And I think I saw one that just came in right before we got started. So let me just go to my email real quick so I could look that up. Bear with me just for a second. I switch computers for my keyboard. And you can always send questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right. All right, and just we had this on a previous live stream, just a clarification with Groove Agent. So we'll show this for the benefit of the community. So if you have an instrument track here for Groove Agent, and we open it up and we go to the browser area, that we could see a little function here in case anyone was wondering. We had this a couple times and it kind of got clarification. So if we go to the browser, that we see this destination folder. So it ends up that this has no real function, so we could just ignore that. All right, let me just open up this email. All right, so we have the album or the question. It says, when I open Groove Agent 5, a window appears. When I click on the small arrow in the top left corner, it says all instruments. When I click on Urban, I can't find all the kits, for example, Hamburg Calling. However, when I click on the arrow next to Kit 1, I can see Hamburg Calling, which is located in the production groove. On the other hand, when I go to production grooves in the right panel, Media Bay, I also can't find Hamburg Calling. Everything seems confusing somehow. All right. Lastly, after I loaded Hamburg, I don't hear any sounds on the piano keyboard in Groove Agent, the blue one, but hear it on the blue tabs of Groove Agent. And I also don't hear any notes in the MIDI editor and the track when Groove Agent is loaded. Can you please help me? Thank you very much. All right, so let's take a look. So let's go ahead and open up. We'll come over here, let's say, to our kit, so we see all. So I'm going to do just a quick search for Hamburg. Okay, get my keyboard on the correct computer. All right, so we have Hamburg Calling. I'm just going to open up in Groove Agent SE, since that's, I think, what the question was about. So let me, as opposed to the full version in case there's any differences. All right, so we go to, let's see if we load kit, if we see Hamburg as a kit here. Okay. Okay, so when I click on urban, I can't find all the kits, for example, urban calling. All right, so let's take a look at, okay, so this may be considered, let's take a look at the meta tags for this particular kit and see if it's showing up, if it's tagged as urban or not. So we see drum set, properties, moods, articulation, sound category. So this is set to hip hop as opposed to urban. So if I search for urban, all right, so let me just come over here. Okay. Okay, so it says when I click on urban, I can't find all the kits, for example, Hamburg calling. All right, so I'm just going to come, let's go back to all kits here. And now let's see if we go to urban. All right, so the Hamburg calling is showing up for me there. So when I click on urban, I can't find all kits, for example, Hamburg calling. However, when I click on the arrow next to kit 1, I can see Hamburg calling, which is located in production grooves. All right, so let's say if we jump back here, we can still see the Hamburg calling. So just clicking on urban for me, immediately, Hamburg calling is one of the choices. All right, and we see, on the other hand, when I go to production grooves in the right panel media bay, I also can't find Hamburg calling. Everything seems to be confusing somehow. All right, so let's come over here to the right zone media bay. I'll close the Groove Agent SE5. So let's come over to media bay, and we will say, let's go to our VST instruments. Let's go to Groove Agent. And it's going to be under production grooves. And let's search for Hamburg calling is there. Everything seems so confusing. So those seem to work for me. It says, lastly, after I loaded Hamburg, I don't hear any sounds on the piano keyboard in Groove Agent, the blue one. All right, so I'm going to load this up. So let's say, okay, so we load this up. This is our Hamburg calling kit. All right, and let me make sure I have the MIDI input here set to all MIDI inputs. So just playing it from my MIDI controller, or if we open up our virtual keyboard here, let me just make sure the octaves. So that seems to be working. Don't hear any sounds from the piano keyboard in Groove Agent. So let me open up the keyboard in Groove Agent here. So these are the different grooves. So, and it could be, so maybe not all of these have samples, but we're triggering those. So don't hear any notes in the MIDI editor of the track where Groove Agent is loaded. Can you please help me? Thank you very much. So it seems like everything is kind of working as expected. So let me go to this drum track and I'll go to the MIDI editor now. And let's come over here. Let me just assign the drum map from the instrument. I'm going to create just a blank part. And let's solo this, and I'll put it into a quick loop. So I come here, let's just say, okay, I want to put in my kick. So that all seems to kind of be working as expected for me. So everything seems to be, working as I would expect, but, let me know if I did anything differently than you did for that. All right, saw another email had come in, probably with a question. All right, so we got a question. Hi, how can we create this short glissando like in the disco strings of the 70s, maybe with studio strings? So let's take a look at if we want to create like a string gliss. Okay, so let me just do a new project here. All right, so let's say if we want to do kind of like a typical kind of string type of vibe. So we'll try it with the studio strings here. So let's add okay, so let's all right, let's see if this will. All right, let's just try. All right, so let's say we want to come over and do like a glissando kind of sound. So let's come here. All right. All right, so when we want to do, let's say we want the glissando to be on, let's say this C note here. So this is kind of our money note that we're going for. All right, so let's come over and let's go to our step input. So I'm just going to come over here and let's just do a step MIDI input. And when we utilize that, I'm going to use my quantize panel. So let's open up our quantize panel. And I just want to put in, we'll just go to our tuplets and let's just put in something ridiculous like 13 tuplets. And I now want to come over and let's start here. All right, so now I want to, let's say I'm in the key of C major, so I could do a scale correction for the key of C, and now we could come over and we could apply, so let's go to my scale assistant, and I want to quantize the pitches to the key of C. And then if we wanted to now quantize these notes, let's say to a 13 tuplet, we could do that, and let's go just take a look. And so now if we just so it doesn't really have to be so rhythmically strict, you know, so it could be a bit more random. So if you're playing, so that's how you could kind of do a quick string glissando. So let's say we'll have our money note. Let me just double this up an octave as well. So we'll come here and I will so now we can and if we wanted to double this up an octave as well for the glissando, let's take that. And I'll just hold down my Alt key. Let's select all the notes. All right, so now we can let me just get rid of the ones. Yeah, because we always need a flat ninth. All right. So you could do some stuff like that. Let's remove that, just that one note here, and listen to it. So just kind of randomly, and you don't necessarily have to make it like straight 16ths or 30-second notes, but just kind of, that's a way you could do kind of a string glissando. All right, and so another question. Recently you told us how to smooth the track. After that, when we switch to small arrow next to the tempo display, you adjust the track to the project tempo. Okay, but what now? How do you save the track or all audio tracks after they've been smoothed? Do you have to save as or export each one and load the new stems into the project? Thank you. All right, so let's say if we're doing a tempo detection, and we smooth the file. So when we're doing the advanced, we could come over. And so we'll show this. I think I have a file that we can do it with quickly here. Okay, so let's say we have a tempo. We have some tempo information here. So let me just make sure we'll activate the project here. Okay, so let's say we have this file and it's not playing with the tempo. So let's say so no correlation with the tempo. So I'm going to do the tempo detection of it. So we'll come here to the project menu and just do our tempo detection. All right, let me just have more than one track selected, so let me just come over here. Let me just let me see if it's okay. So we'll come here. Sorry to move this in 1402. So we'll say let's do our tempo detection of it. All right, so now we've done our tempo detection, and we'll listen to it. All right, so I want to define what the downbeat is. So we'll say, okay, our downbeat is here. So I'm going to continue. All right, so now when we do this, we'll see kind of our tempo detection. All right, let me just make sure I have the... All right, so we'll come here and say roughly this is where we want, let's say, our downbeat. All right, so now as we listen. All right, so now that we've done the tempo, we can come over and say, okay, we want this tempo to follow our changes. So let me just adjust. I think So I'm going to now go to my audio and we'll say advanced and we'll say set definition from tempo. All right, so now when we do a set definition from tempo, I can save the definition, like all the metadata, into the project, or I could actually write the definition into the audio file. So if I've written that into the audio file, I could come over here and let's say we're going to save. I'm just going to choose save definition in the project. So we could choose right here to embed that information. Now, if I have gone to my tempo map, and let's say at the top here, and I want to now adjust the tempo. Let's say I want to do, we could select our tempo values here, and I want to do like a accelerando. So as we listen to it now, so you can see that the tempo is speeding up as we've done that. So if we go to this particular file, if we wanted to like render those settings, if we just double click on a file, go into the sample editor, I think if we go to the processes, we could choose flatten here, and then that would render those changes within the audio file so it could be played back in other projects. So once you've kind of done the changes to the tempo of the file, this is all playing back and doing all the stretching in real time. And if you wanted to embed and kind of almost freeze those particular tracks, you could choose to flatten the processing or render in place. All right. Let's see if we had other questions that were mailed in. All right, so I think we have one more question that's just emailed in. All right, so we see, hello from Germany. I would like to rework all tracks from Cubase 4 Studio in Cubase 11. Is there a way to use Halion 1 in Cubase 11? And when not, is it possible to assign multiple tracks like drums, bass drum, snare, hi-hat, etc. put in one folder at the same time from Halion 1 to Halion Sonic in a project without having to do this for each track individually? Or is there a way to open a folder in Halion Sonic as a multi-instrument all on channel 10 to mix it in Halion, or put it in one single groove agent with separate outputs? Where could I see which program sound of Colossus was saved in the old Cubase 4 track? It didn't open automatically Colossus in C11. All right, so let's say if we have multiple MIDI tracks, so let's say if we have like instrument tracks here, so I'm not sure if we're doing, so let's say we have a Halion, I'll just add, let's say, Halion Sonic. Let's make these into MIDI tracks, and I want to add, let's say, kick, snare, hi-hat. Okay. So let's come over here. So I'm going to just label this, let's say, kick, snare, hat. Okay, so I guess we want to be able to take these drums and route them to a new instrument. So let's say I want to, I'm going to add, and I think the principle would be the same. So let's add an instrument. I want these to now go to Groove Agent SE. Okay, so let's say in Groove Agent SE, I'll just come over here. Let's load up just a quick generic kit. Okay, so I want to just come here. Let's say, okay, I have like C1. So let's say I have my patterns here. Okay, so let's say I'll make this into my drum editor. So let's say, okay, I want this to be, we'll zoom here just a little bit. Okay, so let's say, okay, I have my bass drum here. And let's say I have here, I have my snare drum on this track, and these are all in, let's say, Hallian 1. All right, and let's say we have hi-hats here. So let's say F#1. Okay, so we want to be able to route these particular tracks all to this instance, a groove agent. So let's see if they're instrument tracks. Let's see if we could just route these now to groove agent SE. Okay, and let me just load up the kit here. So okay, so this is now all right. So we took that one track. So let me come over here. I'm going to select all of these tracks and hold down option or alt plus shift, and I want to send all these tracks to groove agent SE. Okay, I'm just going to get rid of these two groove agent. Let's see if we could just take these tracks here, and we're going to send them all new to the new instrument. Okay, so now let's see if we have our kick. If this is going out. All right. So this, let me just load up the kit here. Sorry. Okay, so let's see if we set this to groove agent SE here. All right, let me just check. All right, so let's just put this in a quick loop. Okay, so I'll just start with no instruments here. And we'll start this one more time. All right, so these are all being sent out, let's say, to the grand. All right, let me just, let me not do that. All right, so let's all right, so this instance, a groove agent, let me just switch this. I'm going to add, sorry, let me just get rid of that. I'm going to start with an instrument track of groove agents. Let me remove this. Okay, so what I want to do on this is, so, and this may be different if we are, so we want to send it to one instance of it. All right, let me just put in the hi-hats here. So if they were MIDI tracks, we could take each of those and route it to the new groove agent. And probably in Cubase 4, you may have been using MIDI tracks, but let's see if we could change all these to maybe create a new instrument. So let me see if we could send these to our output. So that's going out to Groove Agent SE. That's going out to Groove Agent SE. That's going out to the Groove Agent SE. So it may automatically send those to individual ones. So maybe if you could indicate, because if it's all going to MIDI tracks that are routed to a VST instrument rack, then we could do it, but I might be able to make a project logical editor. So let's say if I want to send these to, I'll add an instance of Groove Agent here, a full Groove Agent. So I'll add a track instrument just so we know it's different. And I want to take these outputs, and let's see if we can do it in a project logical editor. And let's take selected, container type is track, and the property is, it is selected. And let's go to track operation, connect output. So now if we do this, those selected tracks, we can now come over and those will be routed out to the Groove Agent. So you could try with the project logical editor, and I think that will do the trick as well. All right, let's go back to some of our live questions. See if we got some more of those. All right, let me just scroll back. All right. All right, so Stephen Mike saying hello. Scott, yours asking for people that have switched, who here's went from Windows to Mac on Cubase. What were the biggest problems playing songs? I know about VST plugins, must be the same. Also read PC hard drive formats, external HDs run slow on Macs, so not be able to take my song HD and all my sample libraries and just hook it up and expect the best performance. Is that right? So as long as there could be drive formatting that's available on Mac that's not read by PC, so just be aware of that. But as long as the drives are formatted to be read on either platform, it's pretty seamless to take projects back and forth. See, Bratman Studio just saying to Michael Team, should he try a Scoop or buy another Behringer synth? I think all the Behringer synths in the US are getting more expensive, so hurry up if you're going to do that. All right, so David M. in Liverpool, or just outside Liverpool, says Dark Matter shows the presets, but marked with the no entry sign. I've deleted, reinstalled, moved it into the Cubase folder. Default load was in Groove Agent. Ideas, please. So usually when you see when we go to the media bay, we'll come over here and say, let's get to VST instruments. And if we go to a particular library and we see kind of like the no entry sign here, that would indicate that maybe the licenses aren't available for that. So you could check. Make sure that if you go to your Steinberg activation manager, so let's say if we come over here to the activation manager, let's see if you have, if you have Dark Planet installed. I think it comes with Halion, but just check to see. Sometimes you may have installed it as a standalone as opposed to part of Halion or the Absolute collection. So if you installed it separately, see if you have this and see if you have it installed. But generally that means that there's no license for that particular library. All right, so Bratman Studio says, Rick here checking in from Whittier, says upgraded to 1402, no problem, smooth transition to upgrade, beautiful weather here, looking forward to the weekend. All right, so we see from Val, just says all instruments is also a group. So these are all groups, only one output, stereo out, which is connected via control room. Yeah, so try right-clicking on the output and see if it could be removed there. Okay. See, Michael Teams got K25 Kurzweil 2500 repaired. It took about 6 weeks. It's hard to find people do great repairs of instruments, and the parts are becoming harder to find. All right, so we have Pertti Komenin checking in from Finland. All right, so you see from Val, it says, thanks, Greg and Jazz. It was an accidental child bust. Luckily, that's going to be my only accidental child in my life. All right. All right, Jesse Carmichael just asking, anyone know how to set the default track size? All my new kinds of tracks are only one space high in my template, which has a lot of tracks. Could that be why? I tried resizing automation lanes, but no. So check, it seems to me, and I think Vince Flyv had run into this as well. Like when I added track, if my track height is really small and I go to add another track, this will be the size. But if my first track in my project is taller, then that will assume the same size when I go to add a track like so. So let's say if I make this one really large and then I add another track, it will assume the same track size as the previous one. Now, one thing that may throw this off is if you have enlarge selected tracks enabled. So now if I come here, let's add so let's say I move all these tracks to be, so now when I go to add a track, so that could have an impact if that track is selected and then you kind of minimize the height on that. So if I minimize that, and now like when we select a track, we can make that track smaller or larger. And another tip that you can do is if you hold down, if you want to kind of have these all zoom vertically, hold down Control or Command plus the Shift key, and then you could use your mouse scroll wheel to affect. But also one thing that could be a factor is if the enlarge selected tracks is turned on. So now we could move all of these. If I just hover in the project window with Control or Command plus Shift, we can just we could just vertically scale the track height for all tracks globally. Okay, so we see person with no screen name just bought a Lenovo, 32 gigabytes of RAM, arriving tomorrow. Congratulations. Hope it works out for you. All right, Shaft just says, hello, Greg. Is there a way to have a group channel that has a send and having both the group and the send both routed and summed to another bus? Okay, so let's create an audio track. I'll just drop a loop in. All right, let me just... All right, so let's have this loop here. So we'll go ahead and just play this. All right, so I want to have a group channel that has a send and having... Okay, so is there a way to have a group channel that has a send and having both the group and the send both routed to and summed to another? All right, so I'm going to send this audio to a group track. Okay, so let's come over here. So I'm going to add a group track to the selected track. We'll make it stereo. All right, so I'm going to add group 2. So I'm going to add another group track. And we'll just call this our summing group. Okay, I'm going to add an effects channel. Okay, so let's add a reverb. Okay, so we now have the audio going to the group. I want to now take this group and let's send its destination to, let's say, our reverb. Now let's say this reverb. I want this reverb on this effects channel. Instead of going out to the stereo out, to go out to my summing group. And I want this group coming, and we'll route this group out to our summing group as well. So when we look at our mix console, our audio is being fed to this group, and we could kind of envision it so if we look at, so this group is going out to summing group. This reverb is also being routed out to the summing group. So now if I wanted to put, let's add an audio track, and we'll call this summing capture. And I want this to come from my summing group as the audio input. Now we can just kind of place this track into record. And I'll just take it off loop. All right, so I'll just place that track into record. Okay, so now, and I'm just going to check my routing for this track. I want to set it to summing group 1. I may have to add it afterwards, but as you can see, that group is, the summing group is now playing back all the different devices. So let me just see if I add an audio track after. So it may be preventing a feedback loop with that. So, but that's how we could just print that. So yeah, no problems doing that. Okay. All right, reading through comments here. All right, so we see Kevin Crayford says, hi Greg, I sometimes like to record without following a metronome click for piano pieces. Is it possible to sync it to constant tempo afterwards? Many thanks. All right, so let's take a quick look. It's kind of a rubato piano project. All right, so let's take a look. All right, so this. Let me just see if that's triggering a chord pad or something. All right, let me just. See if there's like a MIDI insert or something on it. All right, so okay, so this is kind of what I was expecting. All right. All right, so what we could do now is I'm going to take that performance, and I'm going to try just to, okay, I may have had a chord track. All right, so let's say we'll take this performance and go to project, and let's do tempo detection of it. And before I do this, I may want to actually just lock the track. So if I put the metronome on now, so I'm going to lock the track first. Let's come over here to the tempo detection. All right, so now what I'm going to do is unlock, and let's say we have kind of varying tempo here. And I want it to be a steady tempo. So let's say I want it to be 140 beats a minute. I want it to be 100 beats a minute. So if I want to go really slow, so what you do is just do the tempo detection, and I think you need to lock the event so that it doesn't automatically be tied to the original tempo, and then unlock it after the tempo detection and just kind of change the actual performance and change the tempo, and then it will follow along. So give that a try, Kevin. All right, so we have JVI says, quick question, have an instrument track. Is there a way to make the instrument track play double time without the rest of the song doubling in speed? Okay, so let's say we have, I'll just take this performance here, I'll revert. All right, and let me just put like just a quick drum beat in. All right, I'm just going to select a beat here so we can have a reference. Okay, so let's say these aren't going to be tempo synced, but just for kind of demonstration purposes, come over. All right, so let's say I want to take the piano and have it play double the speed, but not affect the not affect the drums here. Okay, so what we can do, I think if we go to the project logical editor, and I think that there's a preset for this, and we're going to select this particular MIDI event, and so let's go under, I think it's under the factory presets of musical, maybe note positioning and quantize, but there's, let's say, just try double tempo. And what this is going to do is take the notes and then adjust. We're going to divide by 2 and adjust the position by 2. So the drums, so let's listen to it just kind of in context here. So now I'm going to apply this to the piano part because that's selected. So if we undo that, so the drums aren't changing, but we can take these MIDI notes and we're going to take the MIDI notes and controller and just come over here and divide by 2 the length and the position by 2. So now the drums play the same speed. And let's say we'll take our piano part here. And now we're going to double the piano. We undo that. So that's how you can do it. So look for the logical editor preset, select the MIDI for double tempo, and then you could have one MIDI event double in tempo without affecting the others. All right, so Shaft just saying, hi everyone, I'm new here. Do I send my questions here in the chat or only via email before the next live stream? So you could do either way, Shaft, so no problem. All right, so we have Witty Music checking in from Nashville. Okay, so we see Shaft. Can I route a return effects channel some to another bus channel rather than the main out? So I think we just showed that just a couple minutes ago. So let me know. But yeah, so you could do that. All right, so we see from Val, a Hallian Sonic 7 guitar with a fixed pattern. Is there a way to humanize the strokes a bit? Hallian Sonic 7, 1 finger, fast drumming 6 string. All right, so let's take a look. Okay, so let's find a preset. Okay, so we see 1 finger. Let me just get the fast strumming 6 string. Okay. Okay, so let's come over here. This is probably going to be utilizing the Flexphraser. So let's select the Flexphraser here. Okay, so let's say if we want this to be 8th notes. Okay, so let's say, all right, so let's say if we want to do like swing, and we may hear this more on maybe a slower tempo, so let's say we do 8th notes. So you could kind of come over here and let's say if we could kind of play around with this swing within the arpeggio. So try adjusting kind of the swing factor here within the Flexphraser, and to get to the Flexphraser, you want to go to Edit, to Program, and then make sure that you have this particular layer selected. You go to Flexphraser, you'll see the Flex P, and then you could adjust different controls there for the Flexphraser. All right. See, Mark Rabin is back. Had to answer a kid how to soundproof your garage for drums. Okay, so we see Salam YouTube just saying hi, so thanks for joining us. All right, and I just see, could you help me please? So I'm not sure if I saw a question from you earlier, but if you want to, let me just scroll back. But feel free to ask your question again if I missed it. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay, so I see the question. I have Cubase 13. I can't find the Workspace and main video works. All right, so in Cubase 13, so you have your Workspace set up, so you can say, okay, I'm coming here, let's go to a Workspace. So let's say I want to have a Workspace where I see Hallian Sonic here, and I want to see Groove Agent lower than that, like over here. So we can say, okay, I want to see these two, so we could save this as a workspace. Now, there are two different types of workspaces. There's global workspaces and project workspaces. So if you are doing a piano score, you may in one project, but there's no MIDI piano in a different project, you may want to save that as a project so that it makes sense. But let's say if I come over here, let's say VSTI, and now I will just kind of close this out. And when we want to go to our workspace, and when we recall those different window layouts for us, we could just come over here and just say VSTI, and all those windows will automatically be recalled for you so that you don't have to open and close lots of windows. And for the main video, if you want to see, so if you want to incorporate the video, what we could do is just come over and we first want to, we could choose to import a video file. So we'll come say, let's import a video file. We'll just import, we are Steinberg. This is going to be placed onto a video track. We could also right click to add a video track. So when we come over here, we could just say right click, and we'll see video track here towards the bottom. Now to see the video window kind of automatically light up here,
is Hamburg,
we would hit the
an
F8
independent
key.
historic harbor city. Hamburg
Then we can
prides
see our
itself on
video
its
window.
cosmopolitan society and a thriving
also
young
just
adult
come
community
here.
with many beautiful spots to enjoy
And
urban
we can
life.
also turn the video player on and off.
Having a long and exciting musical history, Hamburg has always been home to an amazing diversity of music. And when the sun goes down, the
So So let me know if that's kind of what you want to see. If not, just let me know. All right, we have Home Studio World checking in from Jordan. All right, sorry. We just... All right, let's just scroll back. Sorry. Okay, so I think I'm kind of where I was. Okay. Okay, reading through comments. So we see from Anthony Clark, hi Greg, I want to add harmonics to a vocal in parallel only for clarity and maybe air. What's the best way to do it? And should we let all the frequencies pass? So, you know, an interesting technique for this, and I'll play example what my friend Wayne did. He was the guy who got me into MIDI and sequencing on computers years ago. Always forever grateful for my friend Wayne, and he let me use this cool project. So, and he did kind of an interesting technique that I've seen used. So let's take this particular project here. So, and let me get to play bass on this. Was fun.
Do you recall the day we first met? That was a long, long
So he did like a whisper vox. So let's say we take his lead vocal here.
grade in the school parking lot, waiting on our yellow coach to ferry us home.
So we just listen to this like on keywords for kind of intelligibility. So we could just kind of emphasize different words. So now when we kind of put that with the lead vocal.
Oh, I remember the day that we wed. Seems like a long, long time ago.
So that's one way to kind of make like certain words kind of pop out. You could, you know, EQ different functions. So one plugin that you could kind of use maybe for that if you weren't kind of doing like the layering. Let's say if I want to take this, now let's go to,
You told your daddy and he called my mom, said you were too damn good for any boy that dumb. His soured words are now dead and done. Now that was a long, long
is maybe let's take just the lead vocal here and
time ago. Now our day we first met. That was a
and
long,
maybe the
long
cloner.
time
So let's
ago.
open up the cloner and see if we can get kind of a, and we
Seventh
find this under
grade
modulation.
parking lot, waiting on our yellow coach to ferry us
Because we could kind of detune. So let's say I want to,
when your heart shone through. It caught my breath while you called me.
so we could maybe
to.
detune. Let's see if we go up.
Well, even now I'm so in love with you, just like a long, long time ago. Oh, I remember the day that we wed. Seems like a long,
So we could actually choose to
long
kind
time
of
ago.
detune. So if we wanted to be like an octave down.
And our first kiss, there was no regret. Right after
And kind of
that
blending that in.
comic show.
But like the whisper vox is kind of a classic old trick to kind of make like the vocal kind of stand out in different sections and make it a little more intimate as well. So it's always a lot of fun to do. All right, we see that Mark Rabin's dog is snoring. All right, Tommy Valenko asks, hi Greg, if I want to gain staging all my tracks, can I simply normalize it, and how on peak or loudness? So, I would probably use loudness for the final mix, and maybe if you're doing gain staging, apply peak. So, the normalized to a specific LUFS value I think is great for like when you have like a very specific like target destination for like a streaming service. But if you're not familiar with this, we can go to the processes and we'll just choose normalize, and what you could do is just kind of raise up the overall volume. So it could work for a lot of stuff, but if something is like really kind of badly recorded with a bad noise floor, realize that it could raise your noise floor up significantly. Or if you have tracks that are bleeding through, those may also get raised, and you could lose some of your dynamics overall. All right, so we see David M. says, thanks, Greg. Dark Matter in Activation Manager, it says activated, but still no luck with it. So just out of curiosity, try to deactivate it and activate it again. Maybe refresh it and see if you get it to wake up. All right, Jesse Carmichael just mentioned regarding track height. I found a forum post that suggested to go to the arrow over the zoom slider and then click all to a certain height, and new tracks will have that set height. So let's come over here to the zoom. So let's say if we want to, I think it's this little arrow here. So let's say if we're zooming, and then maybe the snap track heights would also have an impact on that. So let's say if we snap to the zoom. So thanks for mentioning that, Jesse, and sharing that. All right, we see Stella is back up. That was about a half hour ago. All right, reading through comments. Or as we see from Shaft says, thank you so much, Greg. Very helpful, and sorry for asking the same question a couple times. I'm new here. All the best. So we're just glad to help you. So, and thanks for joining us on the live stream. All right. See, Michael Team says I'm writing jazz chords. Yeah, I was making mistakes. So, all right. So we see Stephen Bancroft says, didn't know you could use tempo detection on MIDI. Ironically, it came first for audio, then MIDI. All right, Michael Teams, it says revelation today, lock the track, tempo detection, unlock and set your tempo. Because otherwise the MIDI is kind of moving itself to the actual tempo affected, and you change it and it's like, oh, it's kind of like doing two different tempos. Okay, we see Home Studio World from Jordan. see Val just says, I tried to Flexphraser but didn't select the layer. Thank you. Great help as always. All right. All right. I know we had a couple more questions that were mailed in. Let me get to those. All right, so we had a question, I believe it's from Dallas LaRue on the last live stream, how to get the presets from Artifact Guitar to sound in the preview. All right, so I didn't seem to have, kind of worked as expected for me. So let's say if I'm going, let's say to VSTI here, or let's come over here to VST Instruments under Media. We'll go to Hallian Sonic or Hallian. Let's go to the Artifact Guitar. I'm going to load up preset here. So sometimes this may take a minute or two for it to load. And you may have to adjust the octave where it's going to. I'll just do it in a new project here real quick. So I'm just kind of previewing now. So say. So we'll come here. So it may take just a little bit to kind of load all the samples up. So as soon as I click here, you may not see immediate response while it's loading up the samples. So we say, okay. So, but that seems to kind of work as expected. Another question that was mailed in is how to embed and extract markers from an audio file. Okay, let me jump over. I think I have a file with some markers in it. All right, here we go. Okay, so in this particular file, we just let me see if I may have accidentally closed it. Let me just. Sorry, let me just get the file here. Okay, so let's say we have like a 2-track file here, and I have markers just to indicate exactly intro, let's say guitar hook, maybe the first verse. All right, so I have these markers. I'm going to just come over here. Let's put the left and right locators around the event. And now this is a new 14.02 function. And we got asked about this on previous live streams. So I'm going to export audio mix down. And we'll call this marker embed March 21st. And we could come over now and we'll see insert the marker chunk. So we want to activate that. We're going to come over here and we'll say, let's get to our song structure. And I'm going to do nothing with the export. Let's save this to our desktop. Okay, so we're going to export the audio file. So if we were to take this file now into Wavelab, it would be embedded. Let's come over to new project. And let's import the file. All right, let me just see if it went into the jump off folder. Okay. All right, and now that's not the right file, so but let's see if so now if we go to audio to advanced, we could say extract markers from the file. So now we could put, different markers as copyright information if you wanted to, or verse, chorus, ending, bridge. So those can now be embedded and extracted from within the particular project. Okay. David M says, one finger strumming with a Flexphraser is instant pinball wizard. Mark Ravens is saying, thank you, Greg, Jazz Dude, and everyone for making the stream great. Glad it's still relevant after 5 years of doing it, ramping it up. All right, so we see, thanks about your sports, about my workspaces, can't come with Windows, Cubase Pro 13, please understand my questions. So it's really the same functionality. I don't have 13 installed, but that hasn't changed from 13 to 14. So let me know if. All right, you see Best Green Jesus wishing everyone a great weekend. All right, JAVI says, thanks, Greg, the double time MIDI event. Sorry, late response, PC crash, had to restart. I'm glad it worked for you. All right, so we have a question from, is this an echo chamber? Greg, does sending an effects channel and return that effects channel to a stereo out cause phase issues? I could get effects. If an effects channel sounds out of phase, what's the fix? Okay, so let's see, sending an effects channel and return that effects channel to a stereo out can cause phase issues. So generally, when you're, the whole signal path is going to be delay compensated, but some plugins, as they're doing analog modeling, introduce randomness to make it more like the original circuit, so that could be causing some phase and timing issues. And if that's the case, you could, I think if we go to the effects return channel, so let's say we add an effects track, so let's say we have a revelation. If we go to the track, let's see, if we go to the pre-section of the mixer, you could just flip the phase right here. So go to the pre-section or of the channel strip. So let's say we go into the channel EQ, we could just come right over here and adjust the phase. And you could flip the phase 180 degrees or, flip the polarity. It could be more technically correct for Michael Pierce. All right, Old Timer says, after using 5 years, Logic Pro switched to Cubase 14 Pro today. Congratulations. I can no more afford expensive Mac machines. Can you recommend me some videos to get started fast? So check out, I think, One Man and His Songs is a great little getting up to speed quickly. And as you run into questions, search the CubaseIndex.com, because we've covered, tens of thousands of questions in a format that, you can probably find a question, an answer to a question that you'll run into as other people. But we're happy to have you in the Cubase family. Let's see how we're doing on time. I think we have a minute or two left. All right, James Lowndes asks, trying to write a vocal, and I want there to be points every move I make, but they sort of average everything. All right, so if you're finding, what you could do is, let's say if we're playing this file and we're doing automation on it. So let's say we're playing this. So let's say what you could do is, if you hit F6 or go to the automation panel, you could access that from the project window as well, the automation panel, and go to settings. There is a reduction level, so try setting this to like 100%, and then there's not going to be any reduction. So as we move, we can just immediately So let's say if we're writing automation, then there's not going to be any reduction in the automation. So you can see it's just going to be very precise. So again, go to your automation panel, F6, or from the project menu, or click just probably to the right where it says touch, and go to settings and increase your automation reduction level to a higher value than 50. Okay. Let's see if we can get one question. All right, Graham Witcher is saying, here's to the next 5 years of this wonderful live stream, Greg. Thank you very much. Hope that everyone's still here in 5 years and we're all making just great, wonderful music with Steinberg stuff. All right, we see John Barry just saying, see it on Tuesday. All right, you see James Lounge just says, cool, thanks. All right, so I think we are just about out of time. I want to thank everyone for all the great questions. And if you've learned a new tip or trick, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. We'll be back on Tuesday of next week, and we'll do Tuesday and Friday next week. I want everyone to please stay safe and healthy, and we'll see you back on Tuesday. And I appreciate being part of such a wonderful community, and we'll see you on Tuesday. Have a wonderful weekend, and goodbye.